Thank you, everybody, for coming. My name is Rich Madalino. I have the honor to serve as the Chief Administrative Officer for the county government and the pleasure to be the MC for tonight. I want to introduce some of our special guests that are with us tonight. First, from the County Council, Council President Kate Stewart. And Council Member and Chair of the Public Safety Committee, Sidney Katz. So from the Maryland House of Delegates, Delegate Natalie Ziegler is here. Delegate Ziegler is one of our newest delegates. I think this was your third session, and she represents the district that shares Montgomery County and Howard County. So it's a pleasure to have you with us. From the school board, we have school board members Laura Stewart and Rita Montoya. Sitting like good students at the very back of the room first. And of course, they're right by the superintendent of schools, Dr. Thomas Taylor, who again is going to get marked down for sitting in the back of the room as opposed to up front. So we've got from the Rockville City Government and City Council, Council members Barry Jackson and Zola Shaw. Now, Dr. Taylor, take a note where they were, and you're So, and then representing Senator Chris Van Hollen, Diane Eisenstadt, and Karen Hendricks. There they are. Thank you. And a personal note, thank you for the work of Senator Van Hollen for bravely going to El Salvador and shining a light on what's been happening. So I think I hit the elected officials. Oh, where? Yes. Mayor Searcy, I'm sorry, there you are. From the city of Tacoma Park. The city of Tacoma Park, which hopefully people know, is where the county executive has lives and served on the city council for years and years. So thank you very much for being here. So we have many directors here, and I'm not going to go through all of them, but in an organization of almost 10,000 people, there are always people coming and going, and I want to take a moment to highlight and thank two people for their amazing service. First, Robin Riley, who has been with the Montgomery County Department of Recreation for years and has served as director of this entire administration. Robin is going to be retiring after, I think you were here for the first rec center, and you're all this time. And so thank you, Robin, very much for your many contributions. So someone else who maybe many people in this room don't know, but someone who has been critical to the success of this administration from day one, Bibi Otero, who has been a special assistant to the county executive and had a distinguished career around the region and serving one time as deputy mayor of the District of Columbia. So, Bibi, thank you for your service to this community. So, with that, we are going to move into the highlight of the evening. We're going to be hearing from the county executive, but I was going to take a moment to speak a little bit about the person I know, because you're going to hear a lot about policies, and probably people know Mark Elrich is a big thinker. Mark Elrich is very concerned about policies. I don't know if there's much Google service to anyone else in Tacoma Park, because I think he spends so much time Googling, I'm sure it takes up the bandwidth for the community. There are many of us in the county government who would like to figure out how we could cut his Wi-Fi service from midnight to 5 a.m. so that John Munger doesn't have to come in and hear about how recycling is done in Oslo. You know, because the county executive does spend time researching and coming in and telling all of us, let me tell you what I've learned about nuclear disposal in Sweden. And, so the guy loves policies, and people know that. But people don't necessarily know his history in this community. He grew up in Montgomery County, right off of Forest Glen Road. He remembers when we were at the 50th anniversary of the Schweinhout Senior Center. He remembers when that building was opened. Mark went to Einstein High School, went to the University of Maryland. I was struck because Mark told me a story about when he was transitioning from high school to college. I was struck by something he told me, and it came to mind when we were all in this room for this great celebration when we renamed this facility in honor of County Executive Ike Leggett. And if you were here for that session, or for that ceremony, you heard Ike tell a fascinating story about how when he was first running for the county council, he was counseled to not put his photo on his literature. Because at that time in a community that was overwhelmingly white, he wasn't sure if the voters of this community would embrace an African American for an elected position. So when he started, he did not have his picture on his literature. And that reminded me of a story that Mark told about how when he was graduating from Einstein, he was from a working class family. His dad was a postal worker. His mom was a waitress in Wheaton. So they didn't have the resources for college, which is why the University of Maryland was such a great bargain for him. But he was given the opportunity to get a scholarship to an Ivy League school. It's not surprising, he was a bright kid. A scholarship to an Ivy League school, and he filled out all the paperwork, but they wanted one additional thing from him, and that was a photo, because they wanted to make sure what race he was. And Mark did not send that photo in to that school because he thought, I'm not getting a scholarship because you just think I happen to be a white person to come to your school. So he passed up that opportunity to go to an Ivy League school because he didn't want to buy into what he saw was the racism at that school and at that time in our country. And he has been fighting that social justice fight ever since. So probably the people at the University of Maryland would have rather you have gone to that Ivy League school, because as a leader in college at College Park during the Vietnam War, he was, I'm sure you're going to be surprised to know, he was a leader in the anti-war movement and a leader in the protests that occurred, the takeover of the administration building, the many protests that happened in College Park. Eventually he gets caught and suspended and told, if you want to continue coming to the University of Maryland, you've got two conditions to stay as a student. One, you cannot speak anymore. No speeches on campus. I know the council might be interested in that, but no speeches on campus. And you've got to be off campus within 5 minutes of your last class of the day. So that was the limitation they put on Mark because of his advocacy and his work. And he has continued to be that fighter for social justice ever since. So probably people know about that, but they don't necessarily know his commitment to his family, his 3 children, his grandchildren. And it's very interesting for those of you who might see Mark's schedule. We know we can never ever schedule something on a Sunday morning for him, because he is the family cook every Sunday morning for omelets for everyone. And and I think it's an interesting thing. He's the only person I know who has his ex-wife over every Sunday morning, right, for breakfast with the entire family of children, grandchildren. And he is passionately motivated by that commitment to social justice, by that commitment to family, to that commitment to this community, and the understanding that what this community means to the people who live here, what a great education at MCPS means for giving someone an opportunity to move forward, what a great higher education means for giving a person the opportunity to realize their dreams. He understands and embraces the change that has happened in this community, and he has been so proud, and we see this every day in the office. He has been so proud to lead this community, so proud to see the changes that this administration has brought about, and you're going to hear a little bit about the changes and the successes that we've had, but probably what we don't talk enough about is some of the successes that we've had with the community and with this county government, because he's always thinking about the next thing. I'm looking right at you, John Munger. He's always thinking, right, with the Department of Environmental Protection, he's always thinking about the next thing because he isn't satisfied. And that can drive a lot of us crazy, but we are, as your colleagues, as your constituents, we are so proud of that effort because it keeps all of us on our toes and keeps all of us working very hard to make this, to make this place, and in fact, to make sure we continue to be, if not the best, one of the best places to live, work, play on the planet. And that's why it's my honor to introduce my friend, my boss, our county executive, Marc Elrich.
So, thank you, Rich. A couple of things, just mildly correct the record. I not only didn't send my picture in, I wrote a note back to Brown, and I said, I'm not sending in my photograph. The only reason you want my photograph is to identify my race. I didn't want him to think that I simply wasn't interested anymore. I wanted him to know why I wasn't going to send my photograph back there. And my first demonstration, 1961, in an anti-war demonstration, 1963, at the March on Washington for King. And then when I was down at the demonstration a couple of weeks ago, I remembered the spot by the trees where I stood during his address. And so I've been doing this a long time. And so I'm used to conflict and I'm used to disagreement. It's part of what we deal with in life. And it's been an interesting adventure. I want to thank everybody. I want to just start by thanking my staff. It's not in the script the way it is, but I really wanted to let everybody know how much I appreciate the people who work for me and the work they do. I told everybody from the very beginning that when you get a job here, I don't want you to assume that the way things are done is the way they should be done. If you have a better idea, tell me how to change it. Don't just take this job and say, oh, well, this is the way we've always done it. Yeah, maybe I could do it better, but I'm just going to do what everybody's always done. You can never change if that's your attitude. And the people who set this up in a different era 20, 30 years ago, we're in a different world now. Processes and things that are available to us weren't available back then. We should all feel free to rethink this, and I've extended that even to the workforce. I've tried to get as much input from the workers here so that they can help the managers, because the workers are on the front line, understand what challenges they face and how people can do a better job. So I really do believe that an inclusive environment and something that empowers people is the way we should try. They basically try to run government. So I'm really happy and proud of the staff I put together. I will tell whoever comes after me that it would be a serious mistake to remove these people, because they will do whatever job you need done and they'll do it really well. And I stand by that, and I'd stack my staff up against anybody's staff. Before we totally begin tonight, I want to express my appreciation to you. I also want to thank everybody who's come here tonight to hear this. These things are not quite as big as the State of the Union for the national government or the State of the Union for the governor, but they are a statement about where we are and where we're trying to go. I'm also inspired tonight by a U.S. Senator's actions last week. And who's running this thing up here? Because nothing is moving. Person on, yes. So, I was inspired by the Senator's filibuster. I thought I'd try to beat his record tonight. I knew you'd appreciate it. The cots will be arranged and breakfast will be served. Of course, I'm just kidding. I'll probably have the speech wrapped up by about 1, and at least the housing section of it. So bear with me. I want to go on and just remind everybody how important the work we do is, and so I'm going to talk a little bit about that, and you can advance a little bit further there. Keep going, keep going. This is damn dangerous when I go off script. I want to thank the council members who've joined us here and our federal partners. And we need our federal partners now more than ever, even though you're going to struggle to serve us the way you've served us in the past. You have been great partners for us. You've delivered really well. I will not blame you for the things you're not able to bring back, because you cannot work in this kind of storm and deliver the things you normally would have delivered. But I know you're going to work for us, and hopefully this storm will be over sooner than later. And I want to thank, I see all the local officials here. Thank you for showing up here, because I started out where you were, and I know the importance of the work at the community level. Sydney, you're a council member who came from being a mayor in a city you know that you're the closest to the people. You're closer than we are. You're closer than council members are. You can walk your districts probably in an hour maybe. And Kate's the mayor. She can walk the whole city, but not in an hour. So you all do important work, and you're good partners in the work we do here, so I want to thank you in that. We have a lot to talk about tonight, and I want to highlight progress, and I'm going to be honest about the challenges and talk about some of the tough choices ahead. But before we get into policies and program, I want to start by talking about who we are as a county and a community. Because who we are isn't defined by political party or philosophy. That has never defined this county. It's defined by values, and those values right now are under attack. And I want to show you something. These are the words the Trump administration has banned from use in federal agencies, according to the New York Times. These words aren't just ideas, they reflect real people's lives. In Montgomery County, they reflect who we are. If we didn't have policies to address diversity here, there would be no way to fairly govern a county like Montgomery, where our population is 16% Asian, 21% black, 22% Hispanic, and 41% everybody else. How do you govern a place if you're not willing to be diverse and inclusive? Who would want to live in a place where they feel like they're being excluded? If we weren't looking at this inclusion, we'd be excluding people, unless you believe, as Trump and Musk have actually said, that if you see a woman or a minority in a position of importance, they're DEI hires. This room is filled with quality people who look different, different genders, different preferences, and every one of them is a quality hire, not a DEI hire. All DEI says that you look and make sure you're opening the doors and making it possible for people to get to the table. We hire by skill, and we have no problem finding skilled people to work here, regardless of what they believe, what they look like, any of that stuff. That's not us. Our diversity and our inclusivity and our compassion are everything this federal administration hates and rejects. Our commitment to acknowledge and our commitment to address problems rooted in our collective history is a moral imperative. You simply can't build a stronger community without acknowledging how the past has shaped us. Not because we're looking for guilty parties. I'm not looking for someone to go back in the past and blame, but it's understanding how we can work together to create a path forward that has room for everybody. That is the purpose of understanding your past. So I want to assure everybody, and I do this every time I speak to groups because people need to hear this, we're not backing down. We won't be intimidated into silence, not now, not ever. And that's our promise. We're not going to attempt to erase the truth, suppress voices, and rewrite history. This isn't just a difference in politics. It's authoritarianism we're dealing with. And this isn't the first time that it's reared its ugly head in America. We had the Palmer raids in the 20s. Anti-war dissidents against World War I were put in jail. In the 19th century, labor leaders were murdered. I mean, we have a history here, and not all of it's great. I grew up learning about police states. Not all of you were raised in the 50s, fact, most of you probably only know about 50s from newsreels, and it's just in past. And I grew up learning about police states in the former Soviet Union and Nazi Germany. And the lessons were meant to shape, somebody needs to move this, were meant to shape, to teach us that, like me, we should value our freedom, that if we lost the things we had, we would lose something really valuable. And the other point of all these lessons was to be very afraid of the Russians. That was drummed into my head since I was a kid. I also knew full well, even then, that the stories I was being fed ignored not just America's past, but also the very unpleasant truths of our present. And that is the fact that this country was virulently racist, and apparently is still pretty damn racist, and that women are treated as second-class citizens, if not lower. And that was the reality, and we never talked about that. You know, we're the land of the brave and home of the free, unless you're a black soldier who went to war in Vietnam or in World War II, and you couldn't go back here and get a GI loan or get the things the white soldiers got. So there were limits on how far we were willing to go with that. Living here, we've come to think that we're immune to the vileness and vitriol that was somewhere else, and that we lived inside this Beltway bubble. Well, if you haven't figured it out by now, that bubble is over. The vitriol and vile is here. But Montgomery County still stands out as an example of one of the most racially and religiously diverse communities in the United States, and that's a fact. And I'll be damned if I'm going to sit back and watch fascism replace freedom and be silent and not fight back. Yeah. Ain't happening. So next week marks 100 days of this new administration. In just 3 months, we've seen more federal job cuts in our county than we had total job cuts in the last 2 years combined. Punitive tariffs are damaging our economy. Research and science are being undermined. And I want to emphasize that for a second, but remember to resume when I get back on script. The research piece is especially galling to me, the attacks on NIH. A lot of people think this is an attack on vaccines, this is an attack on medicine, we don't believe this stuff. But when I looked at the NIH page and I was looking at all the stuff that NIH does, and they'll talk about, you know, the research and medicines are great things that come for it. The two last things about the NIH page, they talked about research into the causes of diseases and research that dealt with the disparities in the community, environmental injustice, if you will. And what they're looking at, because if you're a doctor and you want to cure something, you actually are trying to figure out what's causing it. Because we could cure things forever, but if you don't deal with what's causing it. And this is the thing that Musk and Trump and the rest of these clowns hate. NIH was finding out what made people sick. And sometimes it's the products of companies who would rather you not know that. When he decided to pull all these meat inspectors out from all these places, and you read newspapers about outbreaks of diseases and all this stuff from contaminated materials, spoiled stuff, they're not trying to just kill the research, they're trying to kill the messengers, because when you find out what's gone wrong, then you've got a responsibility to fix it. And they don't want you to fix it. So the best way to keep you from fixing anything or regulating something is to not know what you have to regulate. And that's what this is about. It's about silencing science so that you can't fix things when they're broken. What infuriates me most is the fear this administration has stoked among immigrants, stoked among the LGBTQ plus residents, especially trans people, stoked among our federal workforce, our contractors and our nonprofits, and stoked among the lawyers and advocates defending due process, and even stoked among judges trying to uphold the Constitution. So tonight, you don't have to agree with everything I say, but I think we can agree that democracy, free speech, and due process need to be upheld. So I'm asking you, because societies that have failed are societies where people have refused to speak out. I'm asking you not to be silent, not to normalize what's happening, and not to sit this one out. This is a fight that it's all of our fight, not just some of our people's fight. Because if you lose it and you're going to sit back when it's lost and say, I wish I had done something, it's going to be too late. Montgomery County is going to keep being Montgomery County. We're going to stand up, we're going to speak out, and we're going to keep living our values regardless of who lives in 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. In fact, I'm going to try to use as many of the banned words as possible tonight, as I encourage all of you to do the same. And I've actually, in my practice in talking to the community, I'll tell people I'm not going to say DEI, I'm going to say diversity, equity, and inclusion, because I'm hoping somewhere in Washington somebody actually tunes into me and has to hear those words and make their heads explode. But I think it's important that we do that. We should not shy away from what we're trying to do. And I know we can't control what happens federally, but we can control what we do here for the 1.1 million people who call Montgomery County home. So tonight I want to take a step back. I want to reflect on the past 6 years, not just the big things they've accomplished, but also things that don't always get headlines. There are a lot of people who do great stuff. You will never read about it. Programs that help people, policies that change lives that are behind the scenes. As I put together this speech, something stood out. The problems we face are all connected. We all talk about them as they're separate. We talk about affordable housing. The flip side of affordable housing is paying people crap wages so they can't make enough money to pay rent. Whose fault is that? That's not the developer's fault. That's the business owner's fault. Low wages, education, housing, jobs, transportation, they are all connected. One thing leads to another. It all matters. And that's been my approach, not only since the beginning of my administration, but pretty much my entire life. When I was teaching elementary school, and I taught at Rolling Terrace in Silver Spring, I created something called Mark's Coffee Shop. I did this for 2 years. And I was teaching 4th and 5th grade kids, and this is with my charming 4th graders. And I opened up this coffee shop where my students learned to buy and sell and engage with each other in ways that were just as meaningful as what they were learning in their books. And once a week, I would go to Costco, and I'd buy snacks and drinks in bulk. And I confess I was buying soda and lots of candy. And the most popular item had were the sugar sticks. You've seen them before. But the point wasn't just business. I wanted my kids to experience business, but this wasn't about business. I did teach them about profits, because the only way you can buy things and make things operate is to, got to make more money than what you spend. But what they did was they made decisions about how to spend that money together. So these kids paid for field trips for classmates in the entire school who couldn't afford to go. We donated $1,000 to the school to pay for other kids' field trips. When our custodian's microwave broke and the school apparently couldn't get it replaced, my kids bought the microwave for the custodians. And we bought the first video cameras for the library. When they first got released and that you could plug them into a computer, my kids bought the first cameras to go into the library. They were learning how to run something, that's true. But more importantly, they were learning what it means to take care of each other. And that kind of lesson sticks with you. And it was really cool to see the kids doing this. I will say after the first year, the teacher said, our kids appear to be a tad wired. Could we tone down the sugar? So I replaced the sugary drinks with pure juice, fruit juices, and water. And I replaced the candies with stuff that was like dried fruits and nuts and things like that. Sales did not decline. Which taught me a really valuable lesson. Instead of selling kids junk when they go through the lunch line and buy chips, you could have been selling them anything. They just wanted to feel like they could buy something. You didn't have to feed them crap. You could have fed them something good, they still would have bought it, because that made them feel adult and it made them feel good. That's what I took away from it. When I got involved in Tacoma Park almost 45 years ago, I started doing tenant organizing, helping tenants organize and fight slumlords, creating the best rent stabilization bill in the country, and strengthening our code enforcement, the battle that still continues in the city and the county today. And I helped form the Co-op, which is a business that's still standing. And I'm proud to say it's a community-owned, successful business. When I was there, it was a little bit different. It was community-owned and worker-managed. Now it has a union and a more normal relationship, but it's still community-owned. I realized when I was in the city and going down and talking about tenant issues, and in Tacoma Park, sometimes that auditorium would get filled with tenants, and they forced the council more than once to walk down Maple Avenue and watch the water pouring out of a wall into an elevator shaft, or see the things that were going on in people's buildings. And that made an impression. I was able to get the city to increase the fines on landlords because I wanted to make it more expensive to break the law than to fix things. And we took a landlord to court. He hated me the entire rest of his life, and you know who he is, Matt. And we fined him $108,000, which today doesn't sound like much, but back then, a unit, if you were buying that apartment building, would have cost you $13,000 a unit. That's how cheap it was. So $108,000 fine was real money. But after we fined him, and all the other landlords on Maple Avenue saw that, everybody by the end of the summer fixed up their properties. Because once you showed them, you weren't going to let them get away with this crap. It changed. And I'm a big believer that, you should negotiate. Talking softly is nice. But at the end of the day, if you don't have something to back you up, you're the person who's going to get walked over. And I did not want to see the tenants in my city walked over. When I got to the county council, I don't think I changed much. I was persistent. I spoke up. I did not contribute to the sometimes false unanimity, because while it might be considered collegial, and I heard this from my colleagues many times, it would be collegial if we all vote together, the people who I represented would not feel the collegialness. They would feel like I sold them out. And nothing contributes more to the decline of civic involvement than the sense that it's hopeless to fight for something, or that anybody's going to stand with you. So I never backed away from standing with people. And I will tell you, when I was on the council, there were times I voted for things that I didn't want to vote for, but I'd ask the tenant. I knew there was an incredible price to pay, and I'd go to the groups I was working with. They said, I can vote against this, and you may not have me back as a council member next year, or I can vote for it. It's your choice. If you want me to fall on my sword, I'll fall on my sword. If you want me not to, then I won't. And that's what I would do. Whatever the groups I was working with wanted me to do is how I voted. And I think that's the right thing for a representative to do, to basically be there to represent people. And more often than not, people will tell me to make a compromise rather than lose a seat. And that represents what I thought from them was a reality, that it was better to have somebody fighting for you and not always winning than costing yourself the ability to have somebody to fight for you. But other times, like raising the minimum wage, which we did twice here, workers' rights, civic inclusion on zoning, protecting the environment in 10 Mile Creek, I built coalitions, one colleague at a time, and I even prevailed. As county executive, whether it's been a pandemic, a public health crisis, or a budget fight, I've approached every challenge the same way, with solutions, not sound bites. No one has ever accused me of governing by a soundbite. I can't do a soundbite. Last fall, Governor Moore called me a man of my times, but the times don't know it yet. I appreciated that, and because I care more about what's doing what's right for people who live here than chasing whatever is politically convenient. That is not me. So let's talk about the future, and let's start talking about the foundation. The foundation is education. If we don't do this right, our future is not going to be right. Probably up there with climate change. We can destroy our kids' brains, or we can destroy the planet. Those are two things we should really seriously avoid doing. Education is our single business investment, and adequately funding it is our most important responsibility. This year's recommended school budget includes the largest local investment in MCPS history, $250 million increase that supports teacher compensation, adds paraeducators, and expands special education services, and strengthens school safety. While I'm not involved in running the schools and school policy, sometimes I wish I were, I did and I do understand what's lost when funding declines. I'm happy that the Board of Education appointed Superintendent Thomas Taylor, who also understands the complexity of the challenges of our school system and is facing, and he's not sugarcoating what he sees. That is the first time we haven't had a superintendent who spends more time trying to tell us how great it is when everybody knows it's not great, and is willing to talk about what the problems are and demands action to address those problems. So it's nice having a superintendent like that. And he's here today. This is also the first time in county history where the county executive and the superintendent are both products of MCPS. So another first here. So when I became county executive, I inherited years of declining investment in our school system. The county failed to restore per pupil funding that we lost during the Great Recession. And I will say the council celebrated the liberation from the maintenance of effort, because to some people it was like a set of shackles that you had to spend this money. It was a good thing we were forced to spend money, because we helped the school system become the best school system in the state of Maryland at one time, one of the top 10 school systems in the country at one time. We did that because we made investments. We were never short of meeting maintenance of effort. Since then, we've faced a shortage of teachers, inadequate teacher pay, a lack of support staff, all of which has contributed to declining levels of achievement. You simply cannot educate kids with less money and expect the same results when you made greater investments, particularly when you were making greater investments when the population was generally homogeneous, like me, white, and came from backgrounds where we all shared a common base of knowledge, and now you're trying to integrate into the system a majority of people who are minorities coming from different backgrounds and don't have the same base of knowledge, which means you need to provide more resources and more training and help for these kids than you normally would have to do it. And that's what teachers are supposed to do, and that's what we're supposed to fund. And I've always been willing to fund that because I know the value of what they do, and I know the value of the staff. And for all the talk about blaming teachers for what's going on in schools, I'll tell you three things. Teachers have nothing to say about the curriculum, and that includes the crappy curriculums that have been run through the system for years now. And any of you parents who've had to deal with it, when you can't do a kid's fourth grade math, you know something's fundamentally wrong. Teachers don't set pay, somebody else sets the pay, and teachers don't produce an opaque budget that nobody can read and figure out where the money's going. So don't blame teachers for the problems in the schools. Look at how the schools are run. I feel much more confident about how they're being run now than I ever have. Right now, over the last 6 years, we've restored funding and staff positions. And while we're not back to full funding yet, we're getting a lot closer. And I think there's a chart that you can see with that graph. Rich, is that the right graph? Because I'm not seeing it. So if you look at the two lower lines, is it a red and the blue one? Look at the steep increase in the curve over the last 6 years. That's what we've done with funding. After the cuts, I made a determined effort from the day I got here to get school funding back up to where it was before the recession, because that's where we need to go. I have not been able to get all the way there, not for lack of trying, but I've tried to get there. And I'm hoping that whoever follows is willing to make these same investments, because if we don't get it right with these kids, we're going to have more problems than just a melting planet. And I think we have realized that adequate funding as well as clear focused leadership is critical to our success. It's also about fairness. Some kids come to school hungry, something I've witnessed firsthand as a teacher. And many arrive in kindergarten behind in reading and math skills. And I'm not sure if everybody appreciates this, but to understand what it means to arrive in kindergarten 2 years behind, which is what the school system was telling us, you're arriving in kindergarten as a 3-year-old mentally, not a 5-year-old. These are the two most critical years of the brain development of the child. So basically, these kids have not had the opportunity to develop as they should have developed. Therefore, they do not respond to instruction and anything else the way a 5-year-old would respond to it. They respond to it like a 3-year-old would respond to it. It's not because they're defiant or bad children. It's because they have not been properly prepared. And this translates into lifelong deficits. There was a Harvard study done, and it showed what happens with $1 of investment. You invest in a 2-year-old, there's an 8-to-1 return on $1. You invest in an 8-year-old, there's no return. Because if the damage is done early and you're not prepared to read, write, and do math, it lasts, and it's hard to make up. So it's one thing not to do something when you don't know what the right thing is to do. I get that. But when you know what the solution is, you have a responsibility to address it. If you don't know, I get it. But when somebody points out to you that when you know the kids who get early childhood education make gains and they enter kindergarten and first grade on the same level as other kids and it lasts, and you can't bring yourself to make those investments because, my God, you might have to raise taxes or something like that, that's not a good decision to make. It's not a good investment. So I'm a big believer that you invest in children, you invest early. Every child should be able to go as far as they can go. We've funded initiatives like EquiCare that provide infant and toddler care for families who fall just above the income limits and give them more assistance. And we're supporting providers who are mostly women and often women of color. Our Rising Together program created a path for Afghan refugee women to join the early childhood workforce with training offered in Farsi and culturally responsive support. And through our family involvement centers, parents who don't use formal child care, they might be taking care of the kids themselves, they can still bring their kids into play-based learning and to get tools to support early development. So we're trying to help people in multiple ways. At the other end of the spectrum, and for much of that, we can thank Bibi, who did a remarkable job in D.C. setting up a system that I only wish we could emulate. I wish we could pay teachers $75,000 a year like they do in D.C. At the other end of the spectrum, we've expanded partnerships with Montgomery College, the University of Shady Grove, institutions that are opening doors to first-generation students, displaced workers, and our future biotech, nursing, and IT workforce. Our partnership with Hughes at Montgomery College is an example of giving career-level tech training to our community college students, and we expanded Montgomery College to the East County to address, in part, the long-standing neglect of the area. Some would say the long-standing racial neglect of the area. The fact that the county made a decision to park all the low-income housing they could along the 29 corridor east of 29, rather than finding room in Bethesda and Chevy Chase and up the I-270 corridor where there were more jobs and more opportunities. That was a conscious decision, so to speak, you might say, to put people in their place. This is not a good place to put people, and it was not a bright idea to do that. Now East County residents have better access to education. Every dollar we invest in education, from toddlers to college students, is an investment in our people, our economy, and our shared future. So I believe in this, and I'm always going to believe these are on my list of most important things to do. When I taught at Rolling Terrace, I saw what housing instability looked like. My family was very working class, but we were never housing unstable. My mom, would work waitressing at night. My father would work during the day. She squirreled away money so they could buy a house. But I never doubted where I was going to live. I never heard my parents saying what's going to happen to us. Never listened to them argue about why are we going to lose our home? Why don't we have the money? If you're a teacher, you see your kids disappearing from the classroom because their families were forced to move because they could not afford rising rents. It meant that these kids and their families did not build long-lasting relationships with their communities and did not become invested in their communities because they were always moving and knew each residence was in a new neighborhood and they were going to be temporary. When people don't feel they're going to be in the neighborhood for any length of time, you don't develop relationships, you don't get involved in civic groups, you don't get involved in PTAs because you know you're not going to be there. Working with the County Council, we've committed a record level of funding, more than $168 million this year, to preserve existing units, produce new ones, and assist renters and first-time home buyers. Projects like Hillendale Gateway, Chimes at North Bethesda are already delivering results. Very soon, we're going to be opening the first project I started, which tells you how long it takes to get things through the approval system in this county. We're opening Allium Place, and it's opening off Randolph Road. It's an ambitious project. Nearly 200 deeply affordable homes, 85 of them sized for families, and mix of rental and home ownership opportunities in there as well. We pushed for home ownership to be part of that project, and I'm really proud that it is. That was a big deal, and this is something we have to work with our nonprofits on. As much as we talk about home ownership, it is not the go-to solution for our nonprofits. It's rental property. If you do not build home ownership, expecting minority communities to build generational wealth, you might as well be wishing that you could jump over the moon yourself. You don't build generational wealth if all your money goes into rent and you never get to own your house. So it's important that we continue to advance this. We also worked with Housing Opportunities Commission to purchase existing affordable apartment units on Battery Lane in Bethesda that the planning board tried to replace with luxury housing. In the planning board's plan, they would triple the number of units and almost cut in half the number of affordable units. And that's a problem when the planning agency takes a place like Bethesda and decides we could do with fewer minorities here, we need more luxury housing. And if you look at Bethesda, and you know this is true, almost everything built is 1 or 2 bedroom. You're not going to get any families there. The problem with that, even if you don't care what the impacts are on certain communities, when you say this is going to be a livable community for people and they can live and work in Bethesda, with 1 and 2 bedrooms, you can live and work in Bethesda until you get married and have a kid. By the time you have your kid, you're out of there. So not providing a diversity of housing types and enough bedrooms is a real problem. This partnership included Amazon, and Amazon's made a lot of investments in housing in Montgomery County and elsewhere in the region, and it's appreciated. It shows what can happen when you care enough to prioritize preservation over displacement, and when you understand that affordability doesn't just come from building new, it comes from protecting what already exists. And I'm proud of the investments this county has made in making this deal possible. But we still face a fundamental gap. If you earn $60,000 or less, good luck finding an apartment in Montgomery County. Just flat out, good luck. If you earn over $75,000, you don't qualify for assistance. You also can't find a market rate apartment. You look at in Bethesda, what's been built in Bethesda, yeah, I get 15% MPDUs. The next units are at levels that normal human beings can't afford. It does not work. And we've got to do something about the planning process here, that they start thinking about planning a complete community instead of a luxury community in the best places in the county and just giving a smattering of affordable units to people who have limited income. This has to stop. Our affordable housing program, moderately priced dwelling units, has been a national model, but at 50 years, it's time to update it. When it was created, they advertised this is for firefighters, policemen, and for teachers. When 2 years ago, before the teachers raised their pay at $53,000, they didn't qualify for an MPDU. The people that this was designed for couldn't even get into the units. That's a problem. So we're raising teacher pay, but we need to change the parameters of this program. We've got to serve people at lower incomes. We've got to serve people at higher incomes. High-rise development only pencils out in the high-rent areas. And when it's condos, the fees price out most buyers. The high-rise mania, which the planning board has had, works against providing decent, affordable housing near transit. You hear all this talk about we're going to put affordable housing near transit, blah, 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 blah. But if you make it luxury housing, it doesn't become affordable, and you get a few units, but you don't get enough units to make it meaningful, and you're still only getting 1 and 2 bedroom units and studios. It makes it very hard for young families and professionals to start out, and that's why we've supported projects in North Bethesda that are finally allowed to deliver the products that are in demand. Lower density, more affordable. In one of these projects, we provided funding in exchange for deeper affordability and far more units than required. The fact that the developer had to fight the planning staff to get permission to build a smaller unit. He was approved for 3 high-rises. He told the planning board, I can't build 3 high-rises, there's not a market for it. And the planning staff tried to stop him and told him what approvals they wouldn't give him. I had a chat with some people at the planning board, and they relented on that. And there have been 3 projects now where they've let builders build, not the maximum, but build what the market was for. These builders would have sat on that land forever. With the lower density available to them, they're ready to build now. And we've got to stop fantasizing about high-rise being the solution to everything. If density was the only thing that mattered, maybe. But if affordability doesn't matter and family-sized units don't matter, or if they do matter, this is not a solution. So we've got to be more generous with our developers in terms of giving them the ability to need what the market is looking for. We're also going to keep pushing for policies to make housing accessible to a range of people not currently served. So we got work to do, but it's really important work. If we want to say we're inclusive and everybody's got a place here, you kind of got to make sure there are actual places for everybody to have. We can't support growth, education, housing without transportation and infrastructure that connects it all. Last year alone, Ride-On buses, and Chris, you guys have an amazing department. Ride-On buses served 18 million riders in Montgomery County. That's a big number. 65,000 people every weekday. We added new lines, including Ride-On Extra Pink, expanded Flash BRT, and launched microtransit pilots in Rockville and Wheaton. We brought in 14 electric battery buses. We've got 100 more on the way, and we launched zero-emission transition plan to guide our future. We're even piloting hydrogen fuel buses to the extent that we're actually producing hydrogen. That's rather amazing. Chris, how many places in the country are producing hydrogen and running hydrogen buses? 2? A few. We also just completed the design and review for Veers Mill BRT, and we're preparing Maryland 355. Maryland 355, because of everything that's up there, is the place we've really got to do next, because we've got to unlock the development potential in that corridor. It's not going to be unlocked without transit. We need to unlock it because we need the revenues that this thing is going to generate. And so it's a priority, and we're going to begin expanding Ride-On service next year into Howard County, which is going to provide some relief on Route 29. And that's been a long sought-after project. I started talking about this when Ken Ullman was the county executive in Howard County, and that's got to be 16 years ago. So this is a long way to getting this project on 29, but I'm glad we're finally getting there. Well, all this is good. We still have yet to adopt the funding mechanism to ensure that it gets built, and this work has been waiting a decade to happen. Virginia's funding model works, and it's long past time for Montgomery County to move forward and adopt it. And speaking of funding things, I'm also working with regional leaders to find solutions for sustainable funding for Metro, which is so important to the entire area. And we still haven't gotten there yet. And Kate, you're on this group too. We don't know the answer, but we've got to find a way to get there. Because if we don't find a way to get there, even with the reduction of federal workforce, it's going to continue to be difficult to move people, and we've got to figure out how we make this work. Metro is too important to lose. Through all of this, though, we've paved 500 lane miles of road, rebuilt 190 miles of sidewalks, converted all streetlights to LEDs, renovated 63 bridges, completed major road projects like Snofferskull Road and the western workaround in North Bethesda, which was supposed to be paid for by the developers but is being fronted by the county, just so people know where the money's coming from. And we made crossing Rockville Pike safer near NIH and Walter Reed. We've replaced most of our small gas-powered maintenance tools with electric ones because even small changes matter. This is what local government does. We connect people to opportunity, we fix what's broken, and we build what's needed for the future. Speaking of the future, unless we take the existential threat of climate change seriously, we aren't going to have a good future. It's here, it's real, and it's personal. I don't know what the hell they're thinking about in Washington, but the fact that Republican senators from states that have gone underwater, that have never been underwater before, and think this is just okay is really appalling. Sometimes you got to step out of your ideology and deal with the real world. I've had to make this adjustment most of my adult life. I may want to do a lot more radical things than I can do, but I live in this world. Everybody's got to live in this world. You've got to figure out how you're going to make things work. And the idea that these folks don't want to do it is appalling. Our climate action plan is not a slogan, it's a strategy. It has a roadmap, and we're making progress. Since we launched the plan, we've initiated 78 out of 86 actions that were outlined. 50 of those are either completed or well underway, and these actions are reducing pollution, improving resilience, setting up long-term economic opportunities tied to clean energy. And let me give you a few highlights from this year. with the council's help, because these things don't pass unless the council does it. We enacted the building performance standards, new regulations that reduce emissions, building operations, which make up about half of the county's total greenhouse gas emissions. We expanded solar access to the capital area switch, which has already registered more than 1,800 households and small businesses. We're building microgrids at critical public safety and transit facilities so that even during a major storm and power outages, we stay connected and functional. And our Green Bank is also doing exactly what we envisioned when we gave them more money. They're leveraging public dollars to drive private investment. And to date, it's helped finance 60 clean energy, climate-resistant projects. They've turned $37 million into $130 million of investment. That's what that bank has been able to do, and it's a big deal for Montgomery County. We're not just focused on big systems, we're focused on making it easier for residents to take actions at home, including encouraging residents to pledge their support to our Climate Smart campaign. And we're beginning to phase in curbside collection of electronics and batteries so we can recycle at your front door, and that service is going to be countywide by the end of this year. We've also expanded our reuse and recycle drop-off program to include mattresses, plastic films, textiles, and medical equipment. When I look at my trash bag, after I've set everything aside where it goes, the only thing left was plastic films contaminated with paper and other garbage. I don't have bottles, cans, any kind of normal waste in there. My food's in a compost bucket. It shows where we're going, and we're getting there. I think we're going to be moving that direction a lot faster. In partnership with the state, we're helping food truck owners replace diesel generators with battery systems. It's quieter, cleaner, better for workers and customers, and food goes better without diesel fumes. This week we're making the 10th anniversary of Tree Montgomery, and I'm proud to say we've planted more than 18,000 shade trees across the county. Trees are one of the best things we can do for air quality, stormwater control, and mental health, and they're beautiful. They make neighborhoods better. Yay for trees. They deserve an applause. Did I get one of those things on that list by mentioning trees? We're also holding polluters accountable, and I want to thank DEP. They recently investigated a case of illegal dumping where a plumbing company poured a truckload of grease into the pond in Ashton. Thanks to their work, the company was caught, fined, and forced to pay for the cleanup. I love that combination, fined and forced to pay for the cleanup. And that's what environmental enforcement and environmental justice looks like. Our climate action plan organizes all this work into 8 focus areas: clean energy, buildings, transportation, carbon sequestration, climate adaptation, governance, public engagement, and partnership. We've woven racial equity and social justice into every one of them because no one should be left behind in this transition. We understand that the costs that we are going to impose to make this transition are going to weigh on buildings that have affordable housing, and the county has stepped up to provide money so that the movement to green isn't also a movement out of the neighborhood. We recently shared this year's Climate Action Plan progress report with students at Walt Whitman High School because they're the ones who are inheriting the results of our choices. We're not giving them a very good deck. And they get it. They see through delay and distraction, and they expect action. We owe it to them to keep pushing forward. So no, we haven't solved climate change, but we built a plan, we're implementing it, we're showing that local government can lead and deliver results that people can see and feel in their daily lives. And I'll quickly say that, David, when we brought those legislators through here, that rookie year for those guys, and we showed them what we were able to do, and they didn't know, how do you pay for this? And your brilliant answer is, we're not paying for it. The other government was paying for it back when the federal government actually cared, and the state. But we can do this stuff, and what Montgomery County can be, if we don't solve all the problems, is be a model and show other people how to solve problems. So we're not going to... But I got to say, we're not going to be able to meet our climate goals until all of us take this personally and take the steps needed to green our daily lives. So in my personal life, I have gotten rid of a boiler that I bought 6 years ago for hot water, replaced it with a heat pump electric boiler. I got rid of my 6-year-old stove and replaced it with an induction stove. I had no need to do it, other than it's really hard for me to stand in front of people and tell you to go do something if I'm not doing it myself. So I just bit the bullet and said, I'm going to do it. If I can survive it, other people can do this stuff too. Our environment has a direct impact on our health, and I want to say that, in this administration, we don't see health and public safety as two separate things. We see these things interwoven with each other, and they're not separate issues. We see them as deeply connected, because the truth is, many of the calls that come into our first responders, some of whom are here in the room tonight, aren't about violent crime. They're about people in crisis, struggling with mental health, substance use, housing instability, or poverty. And when we respond to those challenges as a public health issue, we free up our police officers and firefighters to focus on people causing harm, or on actual fires, and not the people who are being harmed by the circumstances of their life. That's why our Health and Human Services team is such a critical part of our public safety system, and their outreach teams. Thank you, guys. Their outreach teams and crisis counselors and health workers are showing up every day to support residents who need help before the situation escalates. It's smarter, safer, and it works to do it this way. During COVID, we started having daily health briefings. I think some of you remember daily health briefings. But when COVID ceased to be a daily life and death threat, we continued these health briefings. So since COVID, once a week, we all get together with the health team and we talk about what's happening in the county. Sometimes things are pretty calm. I will say COVID has gotten pretty calm. We're past the flu season, but we're talking about opioid use. We're talking about other things that are health issues, and we're talking about how we address them. This is important enough for us to talk about this every week so that we know we understand what's happening and we know we're on top of it. And thank you, health team. I see you smiling. Stand up. You're only going to wave to everybody? They're wearing these brightly colored things. And then you're bald and have glasses on. And I'm working there and I have a contact. So COVID taught us the depth of our health inequities, and these inequities did not just disappear because COVID was no longer on the front pages. I want to thank Dr. Bridgers and his team for the consistent vigilance and engagement in making our county healthier. Last year, I was proud to appoint 2 new leaders to county government, Chief Mark Yamada to the Montgomery County Police. And he's here somewhere. And to the fire department, Chief Corey Smedley as Montgomery County Fire and Rescue Services. Chief Yamada is the first Japanese American police chief in county history. He's also a graduate of East Wheaton High School. I used to get harassed by greasers from Wheaton High School in the 60s when I was a hippie. It was not fun. And he's also a 35-year veteran of the police force, and he brings a strong vision for community-focused, accountable policing. And Chief Smedley is our first black fire chief, and he's a seasoned leader who's earned respect from both professional staff and volunteers. With both chiefs, we've chosen the right people with the right values at the right time. So thank you both for being willing to serve here. We've also tackling staff challenges that have bedeviled state public safety agencies across the country, and I'm really pleased to report that we're making progress. In October, we brought in a professional recruiting firm to rebrand and modernize MCPD's outreach. I will say also, after Fairfax did it, it is further proof that we can learn from people across the river. Everything does not have to be invented in Montgomery County. And They've modernized MCPD's outreach with emphasis on diversity, service, and community. They've launched a new website, joinmcp.com, and they're using social media and digital tools to reach younger people who want to serve as law enforcement officers. And it's working. Since December, applications have gone up significantly. We're expecting 35 new recruits to enter in June. This is a big jump from the 22 we had in the last class. So we're moving our numbers up. And we're addressing one of the big barriers to hiring, which is we have a college requirement for police officers. We've partnered with the University of Maryland Global Campus. Kudos to the police department because they initiated it, not the University of Maryland campus. And they're giving credits to recruits that'll meet the requirement based on the intensive training they go through, so that these recruits, instead of having to get a degree before they apply to the police department, can get a degree while they're training to join the police department, and we will not lose them to someplace else. This is a big change for us. And if we could get the troglodytes in the state who control the stupid Maryland marijuana regulations, we have a problem hiring police officers who've smoked pot. Was it the last 3 years? No such thing exists in Fairfax County. Again, across the river. But we've got very primitive thinking people who are not willing to change this. It is legal in Maryland. Why you would penalize somebody, I do not know. But we're going to deal with it. Additionally, our current officers and sheriff's deputies and their dependents are also able to take advantage of some of these programs, and they have access to courses to build skills in conflict resolution, racial equity, and community engagement. This is a model for how we support our workforce, not just with paychecks, but with opportunity and purpose. And I want to recognize the incredible work and contribution of all our public safety departments, whether it's our corrections department, the Sheriff's Emergency Management and Homeland Security, for what they do to keep residents safe. All of these people do amazing work. And over the last year, Maryland Task Force 1, the county-led urban rescue search and rescue team, has been deployed 3 times to Georgia, North and South Carolina, and Kentucky to help residents after major storms. They operate self-sufficiently in areas ravaged by high winds and floodwaters to find and evacuate people in need. And I dearly hope this is not on FEMA's cut list. Because, is it on their cut list? That's good, because not right yet, yes, because they're already cutting funding for FEMA, and I don't know how people are going to manage these crises if there's no federal government to step in, because there is no local government that can undo the damage of tornadoes, hurricanes, and floods. It is absurd to think they can do it. This team serves as tremendous ambassadors for our county, and it sends a clear message that I hope our federal government hears, that we need to help people regardless of their race, creed, or color, or how they voted in the last election. We're not sending people to red states because they voted for people who have helped bring this on. We're helping them because they're human beings and they deserve help. And we're going to keep doing that. It would be nice if the president understood that. This is who we are, and we're not apologetic about that. I've said it before, and it's worth repeating. I'm focused on solving problems, and right now the most urgent problems we need to solve are how do we make our county budget stronger? How do we withstand federal tax on our workforce and the consequences for our revenue stream? How do we prepare for maybe a very difficult few years at the state and national level? And that's why we've been laying the groundwork for transformative economic development, and we're starting to see results. Job growth in this county has been flat for nigh on 15 years now. That drives the lack of housing. If people aren't coming here to work, they're not coming here to live. So you don't get job growth the way we've been doing it. And so we've made some changes. In North Bethesda, University of Maryland Institute of Health Computing is anchoring a new innovation district at the metro station. I worked more than 2 years to get the university and WMATA to embrace this project. And I mean worked. I had to talk people into why this was a viable and important project. And we have it now. And it's grown from 30 people a year ago to 110 people working there today. They have partnerships between academia, healthcare, and government, and the positions have led us to help in the positions that lead to health tech and biomedical research. So we can actually say this thing is already making a difference. And the intention of the state is to put that as the signature building on top of the metro in North Bethesda. And the goal is to grow that. And with WMATA, we worked, again, it took 2 years to do this, but we have an agreement, and within the next couple of weeks, as I understand it, they're going to announce the selection of a master developer for 16 acres at the WMATA site, and the emphasis is going to be on life sciences, and my goal is to turn that into a corridor from the Lerner property, formerly known as White Flint Mall, all the way up to the metro station. That's a great place to grow the life sciences economy and the AI economy in Montgomery County. And we're going to do that. This is the first graduate level research institution in the county from the University of Maryland. And this is one of the things we talked about forever is Montgomery County doesn't have any graduate level research. We were the only life sciences center in the country that wasn't anchored by university presence in life sciences research, the only one. Now we've got something, and now that thing is reaching out. And then, just as a quirky note, when I was growing up, biology was kind of like life sciences departments, and that's where it parked in schools. Biology at the University of Maryland is in the math department because biology has instead of become much less wet and much more computational. And we're taking advantage of that. And Maryland is the perfect partner for this. They're national leaders in both quantum and in AI, and their expertise coming to Montgomery County is going to make a difference. In the East County, Viva White Oak, which has been stuck for more years than I can count, is finally moving forward. What was once a sand and gravel pit is becoming an economic hub, bringing new housing to the East County. The Washington Business Journal just listed both North Bethesda and Viva White Oak as regional developments to watch. But there's even more to the East County. Every project that was stuck when I became county executive, every project, Burtonsville, the White Oak Town Center, and the gateway projects at the Beltway and New Hampshire Avenue, every one of them was dead in the water. I got involved personally. Chris had to sit in some of these meetings, and I made sure that we solved the problems that were preventing us from getting shovels in the ground, and we got shovels in the ground everywhere. And with Viva White Oak and with Montgomery College on the east side of the county, we have completed, or are starting to complete, all of the major things that were missing over there. They are getting done, and I am so glad I had a team who could execute that. We're focused on a broader range of economic activity than we have typically tried to attract. We've expanded business innovation grants to help early stage companies scale and hire. So far, 58 companies have been approved to receive grants up to $200,000 to help get their technologies to market. If we can get them to market in Montgomery County, we plan to keep them in Montgomery County. If we can launch 58 new companies and begin to expand our diversity in the economy that way, that's what we're going to do. And we're open to business for things beyond that. We're looking at people who do manufacturing and try to bring them here. And I hope in the next month or so to have some other announcements that I think will fascinate people, because this is certainly not our normal game plan. We have twice as many companies apply for this competitive program, which demonstrates both the need that exists as well as the innovation that's happening here. We're investing in our business incubators, especially in tech and clean energy and bioscience, and I'm very excited to announce we've opened a new AI Innovation Center to leverage the interest in artificial intelligence across all industrial centers. We're making sure that these programs are accessible to entrepreneurs from all backgrounds. We're also looking beyond our borders. We've done a bunch of international travel. Kate's been on a trip with us. Andrew Friedson's been on a trip with us. Evan Glass has been on a trip with us. I think there are a few other people who've been on a trip. Natalie's been on a trip with us. And through these international trade missions, we're trying to position Montgomery County as a great gateway for global companies particularly Asian companies right now, looking for entry into the U.S. market, and it's actually working. We've built partnerships with businesses and governments across Asia. Many of them are choosing to locate here because of our infrastructure and our values. When people in Asia learn about Montgomery County and the diversity here, and we always bring people who live in, if you go to Taiwan, we're bringing people from Taiwan. If you go to China, we bring people from China. When they hear people living here talk about why they live here and why this is the place they open their companies and they do their studies, it helps people feel comfortable with coming here. Our best ambassadors are not any of our slick stuff we put out, no slick videos. Our best ambassadors are people who work in Montgomery County and say, if you're Chinese, Taiwanese, Indian, Vietnamese, this is the place you want to be. And that's what's helping us. We have a partnership with Daejeong in Korea. They are creating a launch pad for Korean companies in Montgomery County. Their goal is to start with bringing 10 companies in the first year here. This is not a small thing because Korean companies are looking to expand into Western markets, and to be the entry point for the city is a real opportunity for the county. They actually have a person stationed and working in Montgomery County now. We've never had anything like that before. Our progress in economic development is because we've made smart choices, we stayed focused on the long game, and we're now chasing opportunities. We're no longer sitting around waiting for the phone to ring. We're not doing that anymore. I want to conclude this speech by noting the challenges we have ahead, because, sometimes we're our worst enemy. Nowhere is this more apparent than our need to grow our economy in order to create revenues that will allow us to achieve the things we all know we're capable of. I think all of us could make a list of things we wish we could do, that you would do if you had the money to do it, and it would make a difference, and we're not able to do everything. There are many people that think I'm anti-business. I'm actually not. That could not be farther from the truth. I need and want businesses to succeed. We don't work if we don't succeed. When I first introduced BRT, way back long ago, and I was at a Chamber of Commerce meeting in Rockville, one of my favorite developer attorneys got up and said after he was finished talking, he says, our guys have looked at this. We think it works. We just have two questions. Why are you doing it? And how are you going to, and then they had an impolite word, us. And I said, I'm not going to do that. I said, I need you to be healthy and I grow, and I need you to generate revenues so I can tax you and pay for all the things I need to pay for in Montgomery County. This is the function of taxation. Let's not be confused about this. We're not taking people's money to get rich or to build luxury housing. We tax people to build an environment that then becomes self-sustaining. It's a virtuous cycle. You pay taxes, I build infrastructure. New people come here. Other people see other people coming here, like they do in Northern Virginia. Then more people come. We can do this. I recognize that their success is the county's success. They can broaden our tax base, and so we can improve our services. And we need to break our reliance on residential taxes. We do the things in Montgomery County that they do not do in Virginia, and they do not do in the District of Columbia. What I'm against in the corporate world is greed, government handouts, and utter disregard for the environment if it turns out to be profitable. Those are problems. Those are okay things to be against. But giving businesses the opportunity to grow and succeed here is an important thing we try to do, and it's part of our work. We have major infrastructure needs: transportation, schools, housing, and we continue to face artificial limits in how we raise our revenues. We still operate under a tax system that forces us to treat all property the same, whether it's a single-family home or a commercial office tower. You're paying the same tax rate. That ties our hands. DC and Virginia do not do this. Their tax rates on commercial property dwarf what Montgomery County charges. We've talked about facing pressure from the federal government that's actively trying to undo progress, not just here but across the country. We're navigating state budget cuts, national economic shifts, growing uncertainty around programs, and funding that supports our residents. But there's one part of this that we control, and that's the building of infrastructure. We need to attract investment. And if our response to everybody else shrinking is we decide to shrink ourselves, all we do is take ourselves out of the game. we could spend less. We'll build less. We'll serve fewer people. We'll be less desirable for individuals or companies to come to, but we could preserve our tax rate. Is that a victory? Is this what we want from Montgomery County? A great tax rate and mediocre services and schools that are overcrowded and underfunded? I think we want the better future, which is something more than just taxes. When I was on the council, I brought forward this bus rapid transit plan that addressed the problem that businesses, I didn't invent this idea, businesses identified that transportation was the #1 obstacle to economic development. Transportation, not other stuff, transportation. The planning board and the council actually put this in the master plan of transportation. So these are all there. And if Dale Tibbetts is here, Dale and I mapped, if you see a map of BRT, I don't think they put it up there, that's a map that was developed by me and Dale in our office when I was on the county council, mapping out all the origin destination pairs in Montgomery County. Where do people live? Where are they trying to go to work? And that plan passed muster of the planning board and the council back then. We had a pretty good idea of what we were doing. But we've not been able to build any of it. Even what we put on 29 and call the flash bus BRT, anything stuck in traffic is not BRT. It is a bus stuck in traffic. If you want it to be BRT, it needs not to be stuck in traffic, which means we have to invest in building places where the buses could actually run so they're not stuck in traffic. We didn't fund anything when I was on the council because other council members said we needed to wait for state money. And this has been the mantra for as long as I've been involved in county government. If we spend something, then the state's never going to give us anything. That's great. So we don't spend anything, and then the state looks at us and they don't spend anything. And so nobody spends anything, which means nobody gets anything, and it means nothing gets done. We have got to break this cycle. We've got to step forward to address the problems ourselves. Right now, we're trying to compete for economic growth with one arm tied behind our backs. These other jurisdictions have figured it out. They've restructured their tax codes so they can make long-term investments to support business and housing growth. And we've seen the results in Northern Virginia. And I would absolutely replicate what they did, because the key was businesses did not want to pay for social services. So they viewed any effort by Virginia to impose these taxes, you're going to spend this money on social services. We don't want to do that. Virginia's taxes are tied to transit infrastructure. You can't fund schools, you can't fund libraries, you can't fund healthcare programs. You can only build infrastructure. I get it, because the growth of infrastructure will bring a growth in business. The growth in business will provide the extra revenues we need to deal with the investments we need to make and the social problems we need to address. We do not need to, nor should we, try to load all the solutions on top of the developer community. We should load enough that they build the infrastructure that makes us possible to build, but we should not solve everything else. We should solve the other part of the problem by getting the economic development here that'll broaden our tax basis. What Northern Virginia is doing with their tax money is building infrastructure. Infrastructure begets business growth begets jobs, and jobs beget tax revenue to address their needs without relying so heavily on residential taxes. As I mentioned during the State of the County, I'm going to keep telling this story while they keep raising more money from commercial property. It is tedious to repeat over and over again, but I will do it, that you've got a model across the river that has solved the problem. When they solved their problem, they were stuck like us. They'd just done the Tyson's Corner plan. And everybody knew this could be a great potential. But nobody knew how they were going to pay for it. And the business community, the same developers who build over here, build over there, got together with the Fairfax Council. They went down to Richmond, which was controlled by Republicans and had a Republican governor, and they convinced all these Republicans to give the Northern Virginia counties the authority to tax commercial property at a different rate. And I don't know if that tax chart is up there or if we're beyond it. There's a tax chart we were going to show, but I've memorized the numbers. The lowest tax jurisdiction on residential property in the entire DC area is Washington, D.C. It's 85 cents, 20 cents lower than us. You know what their commercial property tax rate is? $1.89. If the property is worth more than $10 million, which is pretty much everything in D.C. If it's between $5 and $10 million, it's only $1.66, a mere 62 cents higher than us. And it gets to about $1.40 if it's between $2 million and $5 million. So D.C. is raising a ton of money on commercial development and only taxing their residents 85 cents. Fairfax County, so Montgomery County is $1.04. Fairfax County, did they raise the taxes yet? Did they go with food or did they go with, so they're what, $1.12? Next week. So Fairfax County is, I think, at $1.12 right now or 14? They're at $1.14. They're 10 cents higher than us. Next week, they will either raise their property taxes or they will raise their food tax to 10%. So they may not raise it out of your property, but they're going to raise it out of the food you consume because the amount of money they're going to raise either way. We can't do that. In Fairfax County, their rate on residents is 114. The base rate on commercial is 114. Every square inch of commercial property in Fairfax County pays 12.5 cents for transportation. They pay in Montgomery County, 0. Or in the tradition of my people, bupkis, nothing. And if you're in a special taxing district in Fairfax County, in Tyson's Corner, they pay $1.54. 50% more than Montgomery County. So when someone tells you we're losing competition to Virginia, people are going to Virginia because of the tax rate. Hell no, they're not. They're going to Virginia because Virginia took that money and invested and built something that businesses wanted to be next to. They weren't afraid of it. The Fairfax businesses didn't say, oh no, don't tax us $1.54. They'll all run to Montgomery County where it's only $1.04. They stayed there. And companies went there because what they valued more than the tax rate was investments in things that made their own investments more valuable and helped move them forward. We have stubbornly resisted that. And as long as we resist that, we won't build anything. Another brief tidbit. Arlington County, what's our budget? $700 million, $800 million a year? Floats a $250 million, Alexandria, floats a $250 million bond at Potomac Yards. My bonding authority in Montgomery County, with a $7.7 billion budget, or 7.6, whatever it is, my bonding authority is $280 million. This tiny little place can float a bond for that much money to build this amazing metro station, and Montgomery County can raise $280 million for everything we try to do in this county. There's something wrong with this. And we've got to wake up. If we want to be the great place that we can be, if we want to recognize everything we're capable of and be able to deliver on it, then we've got to think about who's doing what and how are you getting beaten. I've said this over and over again. If somebody steals your lunch, you need to figure out how they got your lunch. Not just bemoan the fact that they get your lunch. Do I need to put it in a locked lunchbox so they can't get to it when I'm not looking? But I think we need to be more proactive. We're in a race for business, jobs, and revenue growth. And the victory goes to those who invested in the infrastructure. If this was a race to the bottom, Montgomery County's already won it. No place has lower commercial property taxes than Montgomery County. So we are the champions of the low price tax burden. What have we gotten for it? No jobs, no housing, and no revenue growth out of the business sector. So we won this race, and we can't point to our residents and say this is what it's gotten us. If they could go to a Republican legislature and get this done, we ought to be able to get this done here. And that's, to me, the big obstacle. Everything we talked about tonight, whether it's more child care, more schools, affordable housing, all of that depends on our ability to pay for it. There is no other barrier. We've got the will. We've got the community that knows these things are important. The only thing we haven't been able to do in all the years since I introduced this thing is to make a commitment to pay for it and fund it. That stands between what Virginia's done and what we've done. That's it. They're not smarter than us. They don't have better schools than us. They've got more portables than us. They don't have a better health system than us. We have better libraries and parks and recreation than they do. We have all the right things except the investments in the infrastructure that buys and drives growth. And that, to me, is our greatest challenge. So that's one of the things I hope in my last 2 years, year and 9 months, whatever it is at this point, that this is something we can get solved so we can start catching up with the people that everybody says, look at Virginia, look at Virginia. I looked. If you're going to look there, open your eyes and see what you see there. It's real, and we all know it's real. So I guess to wrap this all up, and it's not 1 o'clock yet, we need to start treating investments like they're investments instead of expenses. You can't blanch every time somebody does something and say that's an expense. Businesses, look, they don't invest in new factories and new equipment and say, damn that expense. They make an investment because they know that investment's going to produce even more profits and wealth for them. We need to take that same mindset. We need to act like we're a business and function like we're a business. And that's coming from me. I actually believe that. Government could do a lot more to act like a business and how it manages itself and how it looks at its investment. So I'm hoping we can make this change, and I think I'll go just right to the close, because I said this a million times. I guess, go past that. Okay, now you're a little bit too far. Back. Down. There's no inflammatory stuff. There's no flames beside my words. Okay, look, I just want to close by saying I'm actually very optimistic about Montgomery County's future, because there are not many places in this country that have all the things that we have. You would be hard put to find that. You'd be hard put to find a diverse community that actually is glued together. I don't think many people in many places in this country have managed to transition from a 95% white county in 1970 with 4.5% blacks and 0.5% everybody else to the county we are today has managed this transition better than Montgomery has. No turmoil, no fights in the street, no saying, why are these people moving here? We don't want them here. We have welcomed people. We've made them part of this community, and we built a community that we can really be proud of. The only thing we lack is the ability to be economically competitive. We can do this. It's not rocket science. So I go out of this feeling we're in a good place. When we decide we're going to deal with the transportation piece, we'll be in a better place. In the meantime, we got to figure out somehow we survive the federal government. I thank everybody in here, because I know so many of you, you all care what happens in this county. You're as appalled by the federal government as I am. I think we're all worried about, are we really going to get a dictatorship? Are we going to rule by executive order? None of that is good. But at the end of the day, the strength of this county is what's going to hold us together. The strength of this county is what's going to move us forward, and we're going to get where we need to go. And I'm confident we're going to do that. And I'm confident that we've got the population that is itching to do that. We've got a lot to show people. And, we talk about environmental stuff and all this. The biggest value of all these things we do is we can show other people that it's possible. We live in a world where people don't believe in science. They don't believe in possibility. They look around them and everything seems dire, overly complicated, and where's the path forward? If you can show people a path forward, you provide a light and a guidance that people can't find someplace else. So when David showed all these people, these legislators, what we were doing, it was a light went on in people's eyes that you can actually do that. There are a lot of things this county can show people, yeah, we can actually do that. So let's keep doing what we do best. Let's take care of each other. Let's build this community together. Let's figure out how we pay for the thing. One thing we really need to do. Out of that, we'll be able to pay more for the other things that we want to do. So thank you all for coming tonight. Thank you so much for being part of this.
Just really briefly, there are several other people that came in. We want to recognize the mayor of the city of Rockville, Monique Ashton. The president of the Poolesville Town Commissioners, Jim Brown. Delegate Joe Vogel, who represents Rockville and Gaithersburg. And of course, in the back of the room, we have some goodies from Sweet Release, which is the bakery program from our Department of Corrections. Thank you to the Office of Public Information, General Services, TEBS, so many other people for coming out and helping make sure this event came off. And thank you, Mark Elrich.
Thank you.
Thank you. There are no steps over there.
And I eventually was lucky enough to become a senior fellow, another program that he helped establish. And I managed the Age-Friendly Montgomery program, and he was one of the leaders of